Hi, hello, MangaKamen here. I've always been a fan of collecting things, whether it be trading cards or cute little monsters that you can battle in video games. Collecting things is pretty much a staple of my life that I don't think will ever go away. And back in the days of the late 90s and early 2000s, collectibles were all the rage. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Bionicle, Magic the Gathering, figurines. It was a magical time to be a kid and young teenager. Of course, there was always that one series that I was sad to never see take off in the West. And for the longest times, I thought it was gone for good. Lost to the sands of time. What series was that?
Medabots!
I can only imagine the number of people whose brains just lit up with that song playing the first few notes. It's something that a lot of shows back in the old days used to have with their theme songs. Medabots, or Medabots as it's known in Japan, is a series created by Rin Homura back in 1997. We're talking stuff like video games, manga, and even actual anime that got 3 seasons back in the day. We just don't talk about season 3. The basic concept is similar to that of other RPGs, most notably Pokemon, only instead of having cute little creatures that you go around the wild to catch and battle other creatures, you got a kick-ass robot that battles it out, and the winner can take a part from the other Medabot to add to their collection.
It's your bot goodbye!
That just sounds wicked. It reminds me of the Battle City arc from Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you could take the rarest card from your opponent when you won. Like, yeah, that sucks for the loser, but it really gives some high stakes, especially for everyday battles. And not too long ago, the series celebrated its 25th anniversary. It's true. This series has actually released a lot of games from 1997 to 2020. There have been a number of games released, mostly for Nintendo consoles. But it leads to an interesting question, especially for my younger viewers. If this series has been around for so long, why haven't they heard of it? I'm sure most actually haven't, which is another reminder of my expiration date.
Look everybody, it's a fossil!
The series is essentially 27 years old. That's because the West didn't get a lot of the games that released. Yeah, we did get stuff back in the late 90s and early 2000s, but the 3 seasons of the Medabot anime, as well as the only 3 games that were actually brought over, they were just it. We did have merch like small figurines that could have been used in a game, I believe, but after the initial buzz, Medabots just kinda died off in the West. If I can remember correctly, during that time frame, there were a lot of shows and marketings going on. One of the biggest selling points for kids programming was trying to sell merchandise to kids. Stuff like Power Rangers, Transformers, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and of course, Pokemon. Good luck facing that giant rat back in the day. This is my speculation, of course. But for today's video, I figured we'd go back to the past and I'd give my own account of what I remember about Medabots, share my memories, and talk about some of the interesting things I've learned about the series in the last few years. Again, I'm MangaKamen, and welcome. It's time to
Medabots! ROBATTLE!
Like most people are familiar with the series, the whole thing started with a show about a young kid living in the 22nd century, a slightly futuristic version of our own world. Only with this world, they've managed to perfect teleportation, robots, and social media doesn't seem to be a thing. I mean, give me my own personal robot to fight against other robots, and I'll gladly delete my Twitter.
I see nothing, I hear nothing, therefore, there is nothing.
The show follows the adventures of Ikki Tenryo, a boy who's had a fascination with Medabots for who knows how long, and eventually gets his own Medabot, Medabi, and they're just the best of friends.
Correction! You call me a piece of junk!
Huh?
Who's the piece of junk now, mister? Hey, come back here! I'm gonna show you a little something. Name's Medabi, baby! Medabi!
Well, what friendship doesn't have its ups and downs? Funnily enough, the anime is actually an adaptation of one of the games, the second game to be precise, and it does have connections to the first game as well. Not that any kid in the 90s would know that. Look, when you see Medabi struggling to get up, take out one of the evil bots in his first shot, then dodging the flames and lay a smackdown on the antagonist, God, there's a reason why I love robots. It just really leaves an impression on you, and almost all the Medabots have their own unique designs to them. Medabi, Peppercat, Brass, Milodon. Heck, we even got Medabots that are based off the Monkey King and Ben K. That Gokudo one really tickles my ivory, especially when he goes... Don't get me wrong, looking back on the anime's animation style, it had its ups and it had its downs. Like, the action scenes could be really good. And I mean good, I mean exceptionally good, especially for the time.
Right! Laser cannon!
And at other times...
Hey!
like, Am I even allowed to make fun of this kid?
What in the Sam hell is this?
Granted, I don't think this is necessarily a negative. You save the best animation for the fights and have the cheaper animation for things like gags and such and background characters. And one of the better parts of the anime would have to be the dub. Medabots is a silly series, even in the original Japanese, but I do have a preference for the English dub, mainly because it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Around. Besides, if the rubber robos catch up with us, they'll tear you to pieces.
You're a friend of Dr. Aki's. I can't accept help from you.
Just trying to give you a hand.
I can see that. Would you mind giving me a hand somewhere else? Maybe above my waist?
The thing is, the goofiness of the dub really lends to the already wacky nature of the anime. Like, take for example, the major antagonist of the series, the Rubber Robo Gang.
But it was that dark, fateful night last week, when we were out marketing ourselves, that I devised our current scheme.
Everybody, drop your spray cans. I hate to tell you all this, but we're spray painting the side of the police station!
I knew I'd been here before.
Obviously, there's going to be some allusions to a certain goofy trio from another franchise who are antagonists, but are more akin to goofballs who, when serious, can be a threat, but most of the time they're just comic relief, including the mooks.
Nowhere to run now.
Yeah, hand it over, kid.
Are either of you a doctor?
Huh?
This poor thing was injured. I have to take him to a doctor right away.
What? Know any doctors?
One time I dressed up as a doctor for Halloween.
Well, you'll have to do. Take a look.
Uh-huh. Wait a minute, we're supposed to be chasing her, not helping her.
Hell, just looking at the animation alone shows that there's a more goofy nature to it other than just the dub.
For once, I was right.
Oh!
Baton, no!
Oh dear.
Mrs. Tenryou? What are you doing?
Come on! Have some respect for the dead!
He's not dead, but his batteries are.
Batteries? He's a robot?
Did I forget to mention that?
Oh, now I'm really angry!
If that's not enough, the Rubber Robo Gang's leader has the ability to turn people into teddy bears. No, I am not kidding.
At one point I had him totally beat, but I had to let him go. He cried, Uncle.
I warned you, now out with it!
And that's not a one-off, he does this a few times in the series. There's just this perfect blend of comedy, action, and a little bit of drama here and there. It just managed to hit that sweet spot in my immature brain all those years ago. And coming back to the anime series in the modern day, I honestly found myself more entertained and laughing and enjoying the fights more. Of course, it'd be a sin if I didn't bring up the best part of the show, Mr. Referee!
And it's agreed! I officially declare this match a submission ROBATTLE! As such, I, Mr. Referee, shall act as referee! Alright, then it's agreed! Ready?
Yeah!
Medabots, ROBATTLE!
Well, what are you waiting for?
Then it's agreed! I officially declare this match a submission ROBATTLE! Metafighters ready?
I don't know how this man knows, but he's always there to be the official referee for robots, especially for Icky. The man is determined, and a lot of the times his entrances can be just as entertaining as the fights themselves. He's there for almost every battle.
Let's go, guys!
Hey, where's Mr. Referee?
Come on, let me in! I have to referee a ROBATTLE!
How does this man know? Well, I would say that the show is perfect. That wouldn't be truthful. Like I said, there are times when the animation can be downgraded a bit, and it does suffer from the English dub at some points. Off the top of my head, for an example, is the inclusion of lines just to fill up some moments that should be silent. You know what I'm talking about, those moments where there's supposed to be a shocking revelation or serious moments. They do have to put something there apparently to add audio, and while it wasn't a big deal, I did notice it a few times. There was also the Medabot introduction. They're cutaways that give small introductions to the Medabots and their special attacks, but they're just there to eat up time since there was some parts that were cut from the episodes. It's filler, and the only other time I've seen that was... Man, I just can't get away from that series now, can I? And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the series' own master thief, the Phantom Renegade. He's amazing as a mystery card character and has great range too. At one moment, he is a serious threat that can do amazing feats.
They call me the Phantom Renegade. World-renowned thief. Thanks for the rare medal, suckers.
The next, he's a klutz.
And those fools
just let it slip through their fingers. Hey, no! No! Oh! Why me? Why?
The show is not afraid to laugh at itself, which is something that I can appreciate, although some of the voices can be, well...
Get over this bridge. If a ROBATTLE is the only way to solve this, then Coach Mountain is going in!
Wow, you should coach the debating team.
Sometimes old shows and anime would just have the weirdest voices for characters. There's also the issue with the seasons. You see, the first series had 2 seasons to it, with the total number being 52, so naturally people would want to separate the seasons evenly, right? Well, when we get past episode 5, that's when the episodes begin to get messed up. You'll notice that after the 26th episode, there would be episodes that would be more natural at this early part of the season. The biggest example would be the Medabots Cyan Dog and his Metafighter Spike, both of whom had a few focused episodes, with one of them leading up to Cyan Dog getting an upgrade. Of course, that episode was pushed to the latter half of the English dub, and then there were other examples I can go into, like how the Rubber Robo Gang, after supposedly being defeated, just kinda shows back up, and they're doing their goofy gags again. It should be noted that access to the episode is pretty easy to get nowadays. There are DVDs and Blu-rays of the series available, and there are a couple of streaming services that do offer you a chance to watch it. What about the 3rd season? Yeah, I should talk about that. There is a 3rd season of the show, but it's one that's heavily criticized, and for a good reason. A lot of the characters from the original series just kinda disappear. And not one-off characters or side characters, but characters that were kind of important to the plot. One of the biggest examples would be Karen. She's Icky's crush, and she also is the niece of one of the creators of the Medabots, Dr. Aki. But in spirits, she's gone and replaced with Nai. Not that Nai's a bad character per se, but she's also the granddaughter of Dr. Aki. So we just traded one family member for another, for some reason. And there are other characters missing, like Icky's rival Koji, a number of Medabots that basically get replaced with different models, have no relation to the OGs, yet looking very similar. Oh, and no Mr. Referee.
I hereby declare that this match is canceled and that I need a doctor.
I'm not saying the show was abysmal in Season 3, but I think the reason why it didn't pan out or isn't as loved as the previous seasons is because of the drastic change. It's got a different vibe to it, and while it acts as a continuation of the previous seasons, it left behind a lot of elements that people enjoyed from before. At least that's my thought with it.
Hey, Gordy, what you got there? Latest version of Ducks on a Pond? It's a total quack-up. Yes, I'm unflappable.
What the hell did you just say?
The Medabots franchise has a number of games to it. However, those in the West only got about 3 of them. I remember playing at least 2 of them back in the day. Unfortunately, the games we got weren't the greatest, but they weren't terrible. Let's start with the GameCube game, Medabots Infinity. This was the one I really didn't get to play, but reactions to the game were mixed at best when looking online. It's also the only Medabot game in the West that's 3D. Some of the reasons that held this game back were the camera of the game would be an issue, especially when you consider the gameplay that it can shift from its usual wide perspective to close-ups at ground level. Again, I need to stress I haven't actually played this game, I'm going off what other people have said online, but there were other issues highlighted, such as the slow-paced cutscenes that were unskippable, and even bugs in the game, particularly one that can lock the players out of actual content. That kinda sounds like a real bad deal.
Now, I'm really mad!
One of the games I actually did play in the Medabot lineup was Medabots AX, Medabi version, for the Game Boy Advance. And it's a fighting game. The game came out in 2 versions, Medabi and Rokusho. And you basically had a Pokemon situation where there were differences like the small amount of parts that you could get, and your starting Medabots. A fighting game with Medabots isn't the worst idea in the world, especially when you can customize your Medabots parts in the game. That actually sounds pretty neat. I do recall having a lot of fun with this title too, especially when the levels had platforming and had a secondary fire with you. That was actually pretty fun. The problems start to lay in the execution of the gameplay, since there really isn't any actual strategy to be had other than getting up in your opponent's grill and mashing attacks until you get enough energy to unleash your Metaforce. As such, it's not that hard to really have every match bleed into each other, and considering that there's a bit of a grinding in the game, since there's a level system, even your partner Medabot is practically incomplete at the start, it can lead to a bit of a boring grind fest. Which is a shame because there's a lot of detail put into the pixel art for the game, and I certainly would love to play a custom fighter where you can mix and match parts for your robot to have different attacks. That's what Medabots should be, at least in theory. The game's repetitive was the big issue, even though I found the game to be fun. And finally, technically the first game released to the West, Medabots, Medabi and Rokusho, it's an RPG that takes a lot of influence from the anime. And that's by design because this game's technically a remake of the second game that Japan got. In this game, you basically can control up to 3 Medabots and fight against others. Each turn, you and your opponents will assign actions, which are then carried out at the same time, with the Medabots' stats determining how effective and fast their attacks are and how much damage they can dish out. And here's the thing, much like in the show, each part, the head, the legs, and each arm, has its own health pool. So this means that parts might get destroyed first and disable a Medabot's actions. That sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, there's a major problem with it. You can't choose what the Medabot is going to hit. In the game, if you manage to destroy a Medabot's head, you can instantly defeat it, and if that Medabot is the leader of the opposing trio, you can end the match right then and there. Which is all well and good, but since you can't choose what your Medabot can hit, it relies on luck and randomness. And that can waste your time in that regard. Oh, and I don't want to forget, this sort of thing can happen to you too. If an opposing Medabot gets a lucky headshot on you, you can get defeated right then and there! Even more so when you consider that random encounters can happen anywhere. Yeah, not just outside of towns, but in towns too. It can make it for a bit of a slog. I do want to point out that the game is flawed, but it's not terrible. I can see though how in the early 2000s when these games were released, they weren't exactly flying off the shelves, and how they were made certainly didn't help either. But I'm just saying that I can see why people would pass up on these games back in the day, and how Medabots slowly began to fade away in the West.
We'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest, and it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
So near the beginning of the video, I brought up that Medabots have been around in Japan for quite a few years, over 2 decades, and it's fun. They've consistently released games for quite a few years, even getting games on the 3DS, and I ain't gonna lie, I feel like we've gotten gypped in some aspects. It looks like you can actually target parts from the opposing Medabots, and the Medabots actually look really impressive with a lot more to have to mix and match, and hello there! Well, sign me up for the Robo Gang, and hot damn, that thief character looks awesome. Seriously, one of the reasons why I want to play these games is just for the Medabots and the character designs. Heck, there are even a few times for cross-promotion with other series too. I'm sure a lot of people will know this, but just for the sake of it, I have to talk about the crossovers that Medabot has had. Like with Mega Man and Digimon. Yeah, I'm not kidding, these series had a crossover with Medabots, with a couple of Medabots actually being designed after War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, with there being a variant of Omnimon that had Medabi and Rokusho as the arms. That's so awesome! And then there was the Mega Man Battle Network crossover, where there are a ton of designs that are actually used for the mobile Medabot game. I love the adaptations for this sort of thing, and I honestly hope that there would be something like Kamen Rider being used for this. Come on, it'd be so awesome! We even had a video game-based Kamen Rider in the form of Xaid! This would have been so perfect! But then again, what was stopping Medabots from coming over to the West? What was stopping Imagineer, the current owners of the IP, from bringing it over? Especially in 2020, they released digital versions of the first games on the Switch, and only gave it to Japan? Well, aside from there being no interest in the West after the early 2000s and it dying out in the market outside Japan, Medabots lost its trademark. Yeah, not kidding. In the late 2010s, Imagineer had let the European trademark to Medabots lapse. This allowed a crypto bro to snatch up the trademark and try to create their own Medabots game that you can still find the trailers on YouTube on the official Medabots YouTube channel. I'm not going to show you the footage because knowing crypto bros, they would probably do whatever they can to get money and would probably try to claim this video, taking assets, trying to scam people, even trying to get the game on Steam. The creators even tried to say they bought the IP of Medabots, which, no, you didn't. You see, trademarks and IPs are similar, but they're not the same thing. As a Twitter user, Crate, who has actually documented a lot of this stuff, that's like owning the sign to a factory and claiming to own the factory and everything it produces. What's even more wild is that this crypto bro tried to force Imagineer to change the name of Medabots because he owned the trademark. When Imagineer rightfully told the guy to go screw off, the crypto bro thought it'd be the best idea to sue Imagineer from selling their game in Europe. This all took place in 2020. Obviously, Imagineer decided to countersue the crypto bro, and in 2023, it was announced that Imagineer had actually managed to win the lawsuit. Now, there's a lot more going on here, and if you're interested in the nitty-gritty details, I'll link a Twitter thread that goes into a lot of detail about the debacle. But I can see how this could be an issue for localizing some Medabot games to the West, especially since Europe these lawsuits were focused on had a ton of countries probably would have been a mess to bring Medabots to the West and not get a similar treatment from the crypto bros. Then again, I'm not privy to the lawsuits and stuff like that, but hey, maybe this is a sign that Medabot materials could potentially come back to the West. Maybe. I don't know.
Huh? What is that sound? Medabi!
golf ball?
I'll admit that Medabots had an impact on my life as a kid. Like, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have loved things like robots as much as I did if it wasn't for the anime. And cards on the table, while I would love to see Medabots being brought to the West, in our current climate, I'm not sure if I could enjoy it. Not because I think the games would be bad or anything, but a good chunk of the games that I wanted to play were on the DS and 3DS. Consoles have been largely left behind, and if you know anything about the games in this period from Nintendo, a lot of them actually do utilize the dual touchscreen. And while it's not impossible to adapt them to modern hardware, I don't see why people would do that. That and the fact there might be people out there who get their grubby little hands on the series and make changes that will quote-unquote ruin it. Still, for a few years back in the day, I was happy to watch the adventures of Icky and Medabi. I'd get excited seeing the robots fight with lasers, guns, swords, and flamethrowers. You know, for kids! So when I managed to get double the likes on the community post asking if anyone would want a small video about Medabots, well, I certainly wasn't expecting to get double the likes. Even if this video doesn't get a lot of views, I'm glad I could talk about something from my younger days in a weird state it's in. So if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, make sure you're subscribed, and if you're so kind, please leave a comment. Like, say, Medabots ROBATTLE! I'm MangaKamen, and I hope you're ready for a Medabi bopping. Later!
Ciao for now. Hey, I thought